Hello and welcome to my channel. Today we are going to discuss about primary data and secondary data in research. In this video we will discuss about its definition, its sources and examples, its differences, and which is better for you. Let's start. To begin, I would like to ask one warm-up question for you. Is survey always a primary data? Because I have seen that in many articles and even YouTube videos, they are saying survey is primary data. So my question is survey always a primary data? Please think about it, and I believe that at the end of this video you will know why did I ask this question. While defining primary data and secondary data, primary data is information collected directly from the source by the researcher for a specific purpose. So for this definition, let's consider you are the researcher. And a specific purpose is, let's say you are going to examine the impact of education on income. Let's say to fulfill this purpose, this impact, to assess the impact of education on income, from which source do you need to collect data? You need to collect data from the individuals with different level of education and different level of income. So if you started to collect data by yourself to fulfill this purpose from the source, those individuals, then the data you obtain is called primary data. On the other hand, secondary data is information that has already been collected by someone else for a specific purpose. For example, if you have collected this primary data, someone else means, let's say you, and I also want to use that data for my research, then that would be secondary data for me by definition. Okay, so let's move forward. Let's talk about source of primary data or tools of primary data. First one is questionnaire. If we continue the example of assessing the impact of education on income, then we will include several questions to our questionnaire form, and then we will disseminate this questionnaire to our target groups, and then we will obtain data. This is one tool to get the primary data, and which is most popular also. Observation. Let's say we are assessing that how in students non-verbal behaviors during group discussions indicate their level of engagement. Then we can use this observation, or we can observe their behavior and then also record their behaviors, how many times they are using non-verbal communications, those things. Then this is also a source of primary data collection. Experiments. Let's say you are assessing the impact of monetary incentive on, let's say, intrinsic motivation. Then imagine you are randomly assigning some groups with some money and then another group without money, and then assessing their intrinsic motivation. That is called experiment, and with that field experiment you will get data to analyze based on your research needs. Remember that even during experiments, sometimes or in many cases we need to use questionnaire survey to get those data. So it's kind of sometimes we need to blend other methods also, but this is one. Experiment means is conducting in the field and then getting data. Personal interviews, definitely most often in qualitative data methods we use personal interview to get the depth knowledge or get the depth information from target group. These are the sources of primary data collection. Let's talk about source of secondary data. So remember that all the data that has been obtained using source of primary data will be secondary data for you if you did not collect those primary data. Let's say you collected these primary data, and I'm going to use these data for my research. Means these all the data are secondary data for me. So that is one thing. And after that, we often say the sources of secondary data is government publications, books, journal articles, internal records. This one is based on let's say sometimes employees performance. Sometimes we get the data from internal records for such employee performance, and those government publications means some survey data. Let's say in US we have federal employee viewpoint survey. So this is one survey, can be considered as a secondary data when if you want to use that survey in your research. So these are the sources of secondary data. Let's talk about the differences between primary data and secondary data. Primary is real-time data. Why do we call it real-time? Means, for example, if you are conducting research today for your, let's say, master's degree, then you will design your research project, and then you will collect data, and then you will obtain data from this year. So that's why it is called real-time data. Means most updated data we will get using primary data. But for the secondary data, if we want to use, sometimes if you are going to conduct research on 2025, you may need to use data of 2018, let's say. That can be our case if we consider secondary data, because the surveys, the large scale survey generally occurs in some intervals, not regularly, not each year. And next is primary data. It requires time and cost. Definitely you need to invest your time, and you need to incur some cost also. But for the secondary data, since it is already available, already collected by someone else, just you need to get the find the source and get that. That's why it is quick and economical also. And specific to research need means, yes, it is specific because you will only collect those information that is necessary for your research. That's why it is too specific. And it is may or may not be specific. Some trade-off you may need to do while using secondary data. And next is, it is most accurate and reliable because you are the one who is collecting data based on your specific resource need, and then you can control some noise while collecting data because you know how the respondents will think based on your research questions, the questionnaire questions, let's say. So you can control some noise, and that's why it will be more accurate and reliable also. And this can be less accurate and less reliable, not necessarily, but can be less accurate and less reliable compared to primary data. Involves complex process, yes. Let's say if you are considering questionnaire survey, then you need to design questionnaire. If you want to use those questionnaire in your native language, then translation issue, then designing issue, distributing issue, collecting issue, many more things. But for the secondary data, it is easy to get. Which is best, primary data or secondary data? Both are best because we will use those data based on our research objectives. That's why the decision criteria is how many times do you have to finish your research project, how many budget do you have, are you able to access the source, an objective of the study, what kind of study you are doing. For example, you are doing qualitative study, you want to know the depth knowledge and go for interview. This is the thing. And let's see, another one is whether the data already available or not. For example, if you already have data for your research question, then why you will conduct again, let's say, questionnaire survey? You can use that secondary data. So this is based on your situation, your contextual situation. You can decide, no matter primary or secondary, both are best because data is used to answer your research questions, not to make your research attractive. If you are able to answer your question from any methods, any data source, that's okay. That's why do not get confused. Based on this criteria, please decide and go ahead. And for the warm-up question, I had asked you, is survey always primary data? Then please give your explanation in comment below. I have given you hint because this question, answer of this question depends on who has collected data. So based on that, whether it is survey, whether the survey is primary or secondary, that depends on who has collected data. So please do subscribe my channel for these kind of related videos, and also like, comment and share. Thank you for watching.